The year 2024 was flooded with headlines about immigration and the southern border of the United States. It became a central talking point for Republicans, conservative media, and even some left-leaning outlets. Week after week, we heard dire warnings about an immigration crisis that was spiraling out of control. Politicians like Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and Marjorie Taylor Greene repeatedly claimed that over 1 million people were crossing the U.S. Mexico border every single month. In fact, some of them went as far as to claim that the number was closer to 5 million migrants flooding into the country each month. Now that 2024 is behind us, we finally have the real data, and the numbers tell a very different story. Contrary to the fear-mongering rhetoric, illegal crossings at the southern border actually dropped significantly last year. That's right, illegal immigration went down, not up, despite the constant hysteria. In November 2024, crossings marked an 18% decrease compared to the previous month, hitting the lowest levels since July 2020. This downward trend extended for 7 straight months, from May to November, with a total 60% decrease in illegal crossings during that period. On top of that, deportations surged in 2024. Between June and November, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, removed approximately 240,000 individuals from the country. For the entire fiscal year, DHS reported over 700,000 deportations, the highest number in more than a decade, dating back to 2010. That's an undeniable fact, supported by the DHS data, not political spin. And here's the kicker. These record-high deportations occurred under a Democratic president. Both Barack Obama and Joe Biden have overseen far more removals than Donald Trump ever did, even though Trump made immigration enforcement a cornerstone of his presidency. It's a stark reminder that Democratic administrations, despite right-wing accusations, have been tougher on immigration enforcement than their Republican counterparts. Yet, the media narrative throughout 2024 painted a drastically different picture. Immigration was weaponized as a political tool, especially by Republican candidates seeking office. At various points during the year, polls showed that immigration had climbed to the #1 concern for many voters. While economic issues like inflation eventually overtook immigration in the lead-up to the election, the constant drumbeat of immigration fear-mongering left a lasting impression. The truth, however, is now clear. Illegal crossings fell, deportations rose, and the so-called crisis was grossly exaggerated. These facts completely undermine the Republican narrative that immigration was out of control. Instead, the numbers reveal a steady and effective enforcement strategy under the Biden administration. It's worth asking why this data wasn't front and center during the height of the election season. Why did it take until after 2024 concluded for the real numbers to come out? The timing is suspicious and raises questions about how media outlets, especially those owned by large corporate interests, selectively push narratives to sway public opinion. Consider how the immigration debate played out during 2024. Conservative pundits and politicians flooded the airwaves with claims of chaos and disorder at the border. Fox News and other right-wing outlets hammered the topic relentlessly, amplifying fears and pushing the idea that Democrats were failing to enforce immigration laws. Even some mainstream outlets echoed these concerns, giving the impression that immigration was a runaway crisis. But the actual government data tells a different story. Between June and November alone, a 60% drop in illegal crossings occurred, a trend that contradicts nearly every talking point pushed by the right. At the same time, Biden's administration was ramping up enforcement and deportations, hitting levels not seen in over a decade. Republicans leaned heavily on immigration fear-mongering to mobilize their base, but it was built on a foundation of lies. They exaggerated the numbers, manipulated the narrative, and ignored the facts. And now that the year has ended, the truth has come to light. The Biden administration's immigration enforcement has not only been effective, but has surpassed the results of Trump's presidency in key areas. Under Trump, deportations never reached the levels achieved in 2024. Meanwhile, Border crossings during Trump's tenure fluctuated without the sustained drop we saw last year. This contrast exposes the gap between rhetoric and reality. For years, Republicans have branded themselves as the party of law and order, especially when it comes to immigration. But the data from 2024 shatters that illusion. It shows that Democratic leadership has been more effective at enforcing immigration laws, despite right-wing claims to the contrary. Yet, those facts didn't stop Republicans from exploiting immigration fears. They used scare tactics to push their agenda, banking on the idea that voters wouldn't bother to check the numbers. And, unfortunately, it worked for a time. Immigration briefly became the #1 issue for many Americans, driven by misleading headlines and sensationalist coverage. But the data doesn't lie. Illegal crossings dropped. Deportations rose. And Biden's administration delivered results that Republicans only pretended to care about. What's even more revealing is the timing of this information. The full picture didn't emerge until after the 2024 election cycle had ended. By then, the damage had already been done. The fear-mongering had already shaped public opinion and influenced votes. It's a stark example of how misinformation can be weaponized to serve political ends. In hindsight, it's clear that the so-called immigration crisis of 2024 was more political theater than reality. The numbers prove that Biden's policies were effective, even as Republicans tried to paint a picture of chaos and failure. So where do we go from here? Moving forward, it's crucial to challenge misinformation and demand accountability from media outlets and politicians who push false narratives. Immigration is a complex issue, and it deserves an honest, fact-based discussion, not fear-mongering and lies. The 2024 data speaks for itself. Illegal crossings decreased. Deportations increased. And the Biden administration demonstrated that Democrats can and do enforce immigration laws effectively. It's time to stop letting Republicans control the narrative and start focusing on the facts.